Good evening and welcome to the September 8th, 2021 school committee meeting. Thank you to our visitors. As a reminder, please wear your mask throughout the time in our building, in the hallways, in here, in this space, and any other spaces that you occupy in Wilmington High School. We are just returning from executive session. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item of business is public comment. If you have submitted your name, we will read them off. You have those up?
Yeah, so we have two people who've submitted their names to make public comments here in person. The first name is Jen Capion. If you could please state your name and address for the record, and comment should be limited to 3 minutes or less.
Hi, my name's Jen Capion and my address is 20 Fay Street. I have a PhD in immunology and I am an assistant professor at BU School of Medicine. I've been studying viruses in the immune system for 20 years and my lab has been researching COVID-19 since the start of the pandemic. I am here to tell you what we are very recently learning about how well someone's vaccinations or history with COVID-19 will protect them from the Delta variant, and to share my thoughts about masks in schools as we approach the October 1st, which is when, as I understand, these policies may be reassessed. I have good news and bad news. I will start with the bad news. Adults who were vaccinated more than 3 months ago have lower protection from infection with Delta than those who received their last shot more recently. For example, if you are 6 months past your second shot, reports are showing that you have about 50% protection from getting infected, and if you do, it's roughly 75% that you will have symptoms. We hear about vaccinated people having mild disease over and over in the news lately, but it certainly is not always mild, and I would suspect many people listening to me right now have learned this firsthand. Our seniors are especially vulnerable right now. National data about the numbers and ages of vaccinated people in the hospital is not available for some reason. But some states are reporting this info, and in Oregon, more than 10% of fully vaccinated seniors over 70 years old that caught Delta wound up in the hospital. Now, vaccines are still super useful against Delta, and here's why. The antibodies you make after getting vaccinated stick to Delta perfectly, but Delta throws a lot of itself at your nose and mouth where these antibodies are. So if you have high enough levels of antibodies, it can be stopped dead in its tracks. So all these bad statistics I told you, it would most definitely be far worse for these people if they didn't have some antibodies on board. It's simply a numbers game, antibodies versus virus. Okay, now the good news, 2 things. One new study showed that vaccinated 12 to 15-year-olds are 90% protected against Delta infection. And as the months pass since their second shot, this protection is actually staying at 90%. It's not falling like it is for adults. Booster shots. Israel has been giving 3 shots for over a month, and it looks like the 3rd shot stops Delta infections more than 90% of the time in seniors. The US is supposedly maybe starting boosters on September 20th. I believe that booster shots, vaccines becoming available for kids, and immunity from previous infections will lead us back to normal life somewhat soon. A few months, afraid to speculate. But the virus is running out of places to go, and you can see this in the reports of the new cases, just a slow burn through our state right now. It's hitting walls, meaning people with immunity that do not pass it on. One other really important point, long COVID is very real, it's not rare, it impacts kids and adults, and it is not reported about enough. Roughly 1 in 5 people who have COVID do not feel back to themselves 3 months later, and we are seeing these high numbers extend out for many people past 1 year. It looks like the virus could be inducing autoimmune disease, and if this is true, autoimmune disease is for life, and it's often difficult to treat. We all want the masks off and to return to normal life and school experiences for our kids. But now, given our current number of cases in Massachusetts, we cannot expose our teachers to, say, 20 unvaccinated children from 20 different households when most of the teachers don't have good protection from infection right now. Also, kids will bring home COVID and give it to their families, parents, and grandparents. That said, I do support taking off masks before risk is an absolute 0. I personally like the 1 to 1,000 daily risk as when to remove them, but that's just me. I do think you can run the numbers, and when cases reach a certain level, and we know enough about Delta transmission, booster options become available, etc., there's a way to not wear a mask if COVID is still around. Also, with this apparent great immunity in the 12 to 15-year-olds, which could be true of 16 to 18-year-olds as well, this plan for optional masks for vaccinated people, if 80% of the school is vaccinated, could be very doable. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. The other person signed up today is Jeffrey Cohen.
Jeffrey Cohen, 18 Cobalt Street in Wilmington. Good evening. Dead white men. Those 3 words were in a communication by an employee of the Wilmington school system in April of 2021 using our school's public mail system. I am in possession from my recent public records request of a communication from this employee to at least 5 other employees in our schools. This person used those 3 words in a communication referencing the authors of school books. Here is part of that sentence from our school's public mail system. Quote, books that are more diverse than ones written by dead white men, end quote. The definition of racism is discrimination based on race. Those 3 words, dead white men, are racist and should never be used by anyone in any context, never mind an employee of our school system. There can be no excuse for denigrating a person having any skin color. The words dead white men were used in the exact same sentence as the word diverse. That's not a coincidence. Diversity is being promoted as part of the school's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative. This twisted ideology is being taught to unsuspecting students, and sadly, many parents may be unaware of it. Hopefully, parents are listening now. A school employee used the words dead white men and diverse in the same sentence on multiple occasions, and we're supposed to believe that this is not common in our schools? What if the word white was changed to a different color, like black? How intense would the outrage be? I only discovered this because they thought no one was looking, until now. I know this to be much more widespread than a single communication. In fact, the school has identified 48 other instances of the words dead white men and 649 instances of the words white privilege. I completed extensive research on all the books being used in K-6 through 12, including textbooks, electives, and summer reading books. My research indicates that there is a racist curriculum being taught in Wilmington. Now that I have direct evidence of an employee denigrating whites by saying dead white men, sadly, it confirms what I already suspected. This is not an isolated instance of racism. It embodies the culture that exists in our schools, and diversity, equity, and inclusion are part of that same culture. This is very dangerous to our children, and parents need to be aware of this. Who determines the definition of so-called diversity, so-called equity, and so-called inclusion? It doesn't sound like dead white men are diverse enough to be used in our schools. What are they doing in our schools anyway? You are here as an employee or volunteer to make certain our children are taught English, math, science, and other subjects, nothing else. At what point in time did you stop caring about the welfare of our children, instead opting for teaching an ideology that you know or should know that will permanently damage the children you have been entrusted to teach and protect? Stop indoctrinating our children with this racist curriculum. You have a duty to do this. Stop it now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Stick to core curriculum.
Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment in the audience? Okay, the committee also received 2 written comments which have been distributed and that we have reviewed in advance of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. Our next item of business is approval of items by consensus. We have approval of minutes, August 25th, 2021. Is there a motion? Mrs. Newhouse, second. Mr. Fennelly, thank you. All in favor? And 1 abstention. Yes. We have approval of student activity accounts for the 21-22 school year. Is there a motion? Mr. Ragsdale, second. Mrs. Burns, all in favor? That is unanimous. We have warrants G030506, R02030405, L0607, and CF09.
Point of clarification, please.
Sure.
Can you clarify what CF stands for, please?
Sure, CF is carry forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mrs. Newhouse, seconded by Mrs. Burns. All in favor? That is unanimous. We have payroll ending 9/1/21. Motion, Mrs. Burns, thank you, Mr. Smaha, all in favor? That is unanimous. And that is it. So item 5, we have welcome to our new staff. There's some new staff here, I think.
I think so. We do have some with us.
Dr. Brand?
A small, thank you, and good evening. A small sampling of the many, many that we welcome to Wilmington, and we are so excited to have them. I'm going to, because we have a smaller turnout, I'll take this opportunity in just a moment and ask our folks, if you don't mind, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, just to come up and introduce yourself, because that would be great, and I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to connect before this point in the meeting. But as we have talked about on a number of different occasions here, it has been a very, very busy and active time period in terms of onboarding or hiring new staff. My tremendous thanks goes out to not just Andrea Stern Armstrong, but certainly first and foremost, but all of our school leaders who have been terribly active, far closer to the start of school than is typical. As I've said before, this transition seems to mirror activity that's happening in other districts around. This certainly wouldn't want anyone to think that this is just a Wilmington situation, but nevertheless, we are the fortunate because we are welcoming new folks to our ranks. Some are coming to begin their career in education. Some are continuing their careers in Wilmington, having transitioned from other positions. And some are joining us from other districts. And I think any way you cut it, we are the benefactor of it. I also know that anyone who is in this industry and this business has choices. We reside in a geographical area in which there are many district choices in communities, as I think everyone is well aware. And so I never lose sight of that fact, that it's a mutual relationship. These individuals chose Wilmington, and we chose them. And so to that end, we're so excited to have them begin their career and this school year with us. I'll pause there and just, if I could, just ask our folks that are with us new, to, if you wouldn't mind, just to come up and just briefly introduce yourself and location and role you have. And then I'll share the other names here briefly.
Hi, my name is Teresa Kabush. I'm going to be over at the Strides program in West Intermediate.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I am Jessica Weaver, and I am the new gen ed tutor at the West and the North Intermediate.
Wonderful. Welcome to the district.
On the slides that are here, I won't go through all of the names, but you can see the respective schools that these new individuals are at, as well as not the positions here, but certainly the list is long. I'm pleased to be able to say we are making tremendous headway in trying to solidify or button down the last few spots. We still have open positions, unfortunately, but work is feverishly up, and I can tell you every single day right now to make sure that we are moving in the right direction, and that continues. So welcome again for all of our new employees to Wilmington, and we look forward to working with you and you with our children and our families over the course of the coming year. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. We
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
coming.
All right, item 6, superintendent's report. Dr. Brand.
Thank you. First, I'll start with our school opening updates. This is just an oral report. There's nothing in the packet, but by all accounts, I'm so pleased to be able to say that we had a strong opening last week, last Monday. Monday and Tuesday, we welcomed back all of our new staff, as the committee and the community is aware, for two very full and robust days of related professional development and training to kick off the year. That was Monday and Tuesday. Last Wednesday was the first official day for most of our students, not pre-KK, but everyone else. And those 2 days, by all accounts, went very well. We had some glitches and some hitches with some scheduling around transportation, not uncommon right at the very beginning of the year, but pleased to be able to say that by all accounts in my communications with our school leaders, things have worked themselves out nicely over the last couple of days. We had our youngest children start yesterday, and I think also they got off to a great start as well. A huge thank you to our entire WPS staff who came back on Monday ready to go full tilt, get their classrooms ready and their educational spaces ready to participate in the professional development and required trainings that we had and walk through with them over the course of a couple of days. That allowed us to open the way that we did. I've had a chance to visit most, not all, but most schools at this point in time, and I swear that I can see the smiles under the masks of both of our teachers as well as our students. And that seems to be a general sentiment, that while unfortunately some of this continues and some of the variations in our regular operations, we're back to near normal, and people are thrilled to be back in person, full-time. And that includes, from my vantage point, both our students as well as our staff. So we're excited to get this year up and running, and thank you to the efforts of all and the support of the committee to help certainly make that possible. Item 6B, also this is just an oral report, just a few things around general updates regarding health and safety. As you're aware, the mask mandate continues right now from the Department of Education. That is through until October 1st. The threshold of 80% vaccination rate has been identified as part of that mandate or policy, if you will. Superintendents and respectively school committee are waiting for more information from the Department of Education in terms of what may come next, whether or not that date at all changes from the Department of Education, and what local decisions that there are, or will be rather, in terms of respective policies regarding face coverings and masks going forward after October 1st. So certainly stay tuned for that. I know that I've mentioned in the past, but just to share with you again to confirm that we've applied for the Test and Stay program. One of the testing options that DESE has offered districts. We are anxiously and eagerly awaiting information from them. As soon as that's available, most certainly we will share that with our community at large to understand how that program will operate. The COVID tracker, just quickly, some have reached out with interest and curiosity around that. I can tell you that our full intention is to get that tracking system that we had in place last year up and running again. You may recall that that was a system that tracked active live, if you will, cases at both the district and school level, and work is happening behind the scenes to make sure that that is happening as well. And then the final thing, just to make sure that our community is aware of, I think this is important, is we are approaching masks. I think everyone is well aware of where we're situated with that. But in terms of how we ended the school year with cleaning and disinfecting of our school buildings, thank you to Mr. Hooper and his crew. Not only got our buildings ready, of course, for school opening, and forgive me for not calling out a special shout out to them and mention at the outset, but also Mr. Hooper's direction to his staff. And we're so thankful for this, that our cleaning and disinfecting will continue now going forward as it was the case in the spring. So in other words, our custodial crew is picking up where they left off, and that's a good thing, and we obviously appreciate their efforts in helping keep our buildings clean and disinfected on a regular basis. I'll pause there in case, I don't want to just keep rattling through, but in case there are any questions that members have.
Thank you. Questions? Keep rattling, I guess.
All right, I will. Item 6C, there will be a memo that will be formally incorporated into the packet. Members have this at their table, I believe. This is an annual appointment, and it is, as you know, we are a member of the SEAM Collaborative. And within that collaborative, there sometimes are different structures, but in the SEAM Collaborative, sitting on the board of directors is the superintendent of the member districts. By actually Mass General Law, as a school committee, you're required annually to appoint the superintendent of schools to sit on that board, and so that is here again for you, and requesting a motion as outlined, as you can see on that memo.
Thank you. Other questions? Motion? Mrs. Plowman?
I move to appoint Superintendent Glenn Brand to the SEAM Board of Directors for the 2021-22 school year.
Thank you. Seconded by Mrs. Burns. Second. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on, in the superintendent's report, 2 items. Left 6D, MSBA update. Just very briefly, in your packet is a copy of the document. I actually think this is the first official document that the town and the school district has submitted to MSBA. You can see that this provides an overview of the members collectively of that will be a part of the building committee. Right? I have the right term, Paul? I think so.
Yes.
Sorry. There is some more activity that will be to come in the next couple of weeks. I'll keep you certainly posted of that and bring that to you. We have a couple of next pieces of information to share with MSBA, and so work will begin on that quickly here as we'll meet the next mark at the end of September. As has been mentioned in the past, it certainly will be my full intention to make sure that the committee and our community is aware of the developments. Even though this is rather quiet and behind the scenes right now, certainly there's some activity, and we'll make sure that you have that information before you. And then finally, item E, there is a document in your packet, Summer Fall Department of Public Works and Public Building Projects. As I have come to learn over the last number of years here, we are incredibly fortunate to have tremendous support from our town entities, and in particular the DPW and the Public Works. They work very, very hard behind the scenes, and in particular through the summer to help ready our buildings. And just to share with you briefly that overview of the many, many projects that were tackled throughout the course, not just of the summer, but many of them were. And so an overview of their, for really just for an FYI for yourselves and members of the committee. I don't know, Paul, do you want to add anything to this vote?
No, I think what you have is just a list of some of the bigger jobs that both the Department of Public Works and Public Buildings worked on over the summer. Some of the big things, Shawshing Tennis Court, we're doing some work at the high school track, not yet, just in the planning phases there, and then Public Buildings. One of the huge jobs was the removal of ceiling tiles at the Woburn Street School. So it was a busy summer all around. And, again, as the superintendent said, shout out to both the DPW and Public Buildings. They do such a great job and this works so collaboratively with the schools. And, the Public Buildings did all the work, and the schools look beautiful for the first days of school. So.
Thank you.
And with that concludes my report for tonight.
Questions or comments? Mrs. Burns?
I would also like to echo Mr. Rogero's shout out to the buildings and the Department of Public Works, because it's an immense job keeping some, especially our aging buildings, looking as friendly and inviting as possible. And I think they do a spectacular job in the work that they do all summer. And I know it's a race against time, always is. So I just want to express my gratitude for all their work and diligence in meeting the expectations of our staff and students for their first day walking into the school building. It's great. Sincerely grateful. Wonderful work.
Thank you, Mrs. Burns. Any other comments or questions for Dr. Brand? And I'll just add in, thank you to the families for working on those chalk artwork outside. I saw pictures of it on maybe Facebook or Twitter, but some beautiful ways to, I think, welcome some of our younger students throughout the district. So thank you to our PACs and our families for doing some of that work as well. And that brings us to old business. There is none, so we'll move into new business. Sorry.
The parent working.
Yeah, so then I don't think, are they here yet?
They didn't tell me exactly who was gonna come.
Okay,
They just said someone was.
all right. You think they're outside?
One of them is here.
Oh, okay. Do you want to do mine? Thanks. So the first, 8A is the parent working group presentation. No, okay. All right, so we're a little early. Here it says 8:30, so I'll move ahead, and then when they arrive, we'll come back to that. So 8B, we are actually going to move this to our next meeting, the end of September. Then we have the first reading of the school wellness policy, ADF. We met in our subcommittee earlier this evening. We had just a couple of small revisions, and Mr. Ragsdale was taking those notes. So I know typically you would see exactly what it is although this is only a first read. So we wanted to just make those revisions to you to see if you were okay with them, and then we'll bring it back next time for a second read. So, David.
Sure, I can describe them.
Yes, please.
So so very few. The first one was simply under the section of Wellness Committee, that we simply changed parent to parent/guardian as the first option, of at least one parent/guardian. The second change was under, to find out where.
Under
Sorry, I wasn't-
nutrition. Sorry.
Yeah, this is not the
Mr. Fennelly, do
format
you remember?
So we had one.
Nutrition, oh, sure, I have it now. So under nutrition education. So if you look at the two red line paragraphs, the two new paragraphs that were introduced at the bottom of that section, that the first one had talked about strategies will be used to promote, I forget the exact language that it had used, but basically promote participation in the school lunch period. And we just made a minor alteration to that. So you can see it says now, strategies will be used to promote the nutrition and value of school meals rather than the participation specifically in the school meal program. So that's just the first sentence of that first redlined paragraph. And the third change, and this, Jesse, I'll need some help remembering where it
It's
was.
on the first page under nutrition guidelines, it's the first red block where it says the school district is in compliance with all federal and state nutrition standards.
Right, there was basically there was a statement in the policy that said the school district is in compliance, and we simply changed that to will remain in compliance to make it more of a policy, use policy language for that.
Yep.
So those are the three changes.
Great, thank
that
you
we
so
made.
much. And then obviously all the other red lines we agreed with, so we didn't make any other changes. Are there questions or anything you'd like us to bring back to the committee before we do a second read at the end of September? Mrs.
I
Fleming?
had a question on page 3, where in the part that was being revised in red, it says schools in the district will develop joint use agreements with community partners in order to provide expanded opportunities for all students and community. I just didn't understand what that meant when we talk about joint use agreements. Do we know
Sure,
what that means?
thank you. I did actually follow up on that, but I myself wasn't a part of this work, but just wanted a clarification. So the intent here, according to my discussion with Ms. Palin earlier today, was really to try and recognize that there are frequently activities within the community that may be, charitable walk or some sort of standalone, if you will, entity offering some kind of activity. And to seek opportunities to collaborate, the idea of joint use, I think, and partner up is what my understanding is. And to try and be more deliberate in pursuit of exploring those kind of partnerships. That's my understanding of what this intent here was for that.
Mrs. Burns?
I too had that same question for Dr. Brandon. I know with the School Advisory Council, and forgive me because I'm a little short on capacity right now, they do, where they join forces with the police department, and they do a walk, they pick up the walking school bus, that's what it is.
Yeah,
And the
that's a good
police
example.
department is involved, so I think in that line, that's what they mean by joint use, to promote health, wellness, and safety within the schools. May I possibly make a suggestion with regards to that, because that is, I think, very unique. Is that, do you think maybe an example after that piece, like walking school, i.e. walking school bus, may be beneficial to kind of, for clarification purposes for parents who may be, or anyone who may be wondering similar what joint use looks like.
Yep. Is that okay? Can you add that?
I
Do we
can-
have other examples of that, or is that?
So the walking school bus is one.
Was there like a farmer day, am I thinking of the right thing? Like, right near the Boutwell, there's a gentleman who has a garden, and I know that students would like, are we talking about stuff like that? Where they would visit his garden and he would give, or is that more like a field trip?
That I'm not aware of, because I do know that that some of the schools have, and even at the high school, they have these kind of standalone, I don't know what they're called, but Mary Palin had purchased them, where they grow their own lettuce in these standalone planters under green lines. And I know that there's another small garden on one of the properties that the students tend to. Forgive me, I mean,
No, you know
it just
what?
popped in my head
No, I think
that.
that's great. Why don't we actually just go back to
Sure, of course.
Mary and ask
Yep.
for just maybe one or two more?
Clarify.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Sure.
And then we'll bring that back to you next time.
Thank
Any
you.
other, thank you so much. Good suggestions. Any other comments or questions about this policy? Okay, great. All right, so we will shift back to 8A. Our parent working group presenters have definitely arrived. We're running a little ahead of schedule, so sorry about that. If you are ready, we are ready. I'm not sure who's, yeah, come on down front, sure.
Do you have a presentation?
Oh, awesome. There's your,
Okay, we're gonna kind of tag team it.
Sure.
We have a full
of course, yeah.
complement of people here that are gonna participate.
All right, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for having us. And for all the work you're doing to get us up to speed this year, so. All right, so my name is Barb Bodwin, and I am here along with other parents and guardians that have participated in a working group that was established in March. We talked about it here at the committee. We went and formed a group that met between March and June. And we wanted to bring it back to you all tonight to talk through what we sort of are proposing. This is designed as a district-wide parent-guardian group, and we recruited individuals from across the district, parents and guardians from two from each of the Wilmington public schools. And that group, the activities included sort of personal parental insights, what we were thinking about, as well as feedback that was collected from a variety of stakeholders across the district. We researched some other districts in terms of some of the initiatives that they had, and then really worked together to develop a proposal that we presented to the Family Outreach Subcommittee and to the superintendent in June. So this is really about bringing it back to the larger committee, and also introducing it to parents as we really want to begin the school year and think about this as a functional group this year. So this slide just shows that the participants that were involved, and you can see that nice balance across the schools and across the levels. We'll also just note that many of the folks involved had students many students, so they had experience in different schools. And I think that idea of having different levels and different schools from across the side of town really helped inform our thinking. The other thing that I'll just mention in this slide, there's a real consistent theme in terms of it being a productive, constructive group that was really focused on positive outcomes and positive conversations, even when we didn't necessarily, agree or had different ideas about where we should go. So I'm really proud of the work and the group that was put together for this purpose. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jen, who's going to talk about stakeholder participation.
Hi, I'm Jen Minnelli, and I'm going to talk about our stakeholder participants. So it was really important to our working group that the foundation of this newly formed group was based upon a purpose and a mission representing views that were greater than those that you'll see today, or even the 16 that were represented in our group. Also, that the group, we wanted to make sure that the group's mission would be fulfilling gaps and unmet needs of the school district, and supporting all the different stakeholders that were involved. So we conducted interviews, more than 25, with stakeholders at the district level as well as the school level, and our slides here kind of represent all the different facets, making sure that we had representatives of many of the district level and school level groups and across all 8 schools. And through these interviews, we gathered feedback to assess the district level group and identify opportunities where a district-wide group could support parents and other stakeholders, and really where we felt that parents could support one another in communication. At an overall level, I don't want, a lot of them, the details will be detailed as we read back what our group's purpose is, but I do just want to say that across the stakeholders, the reaction to the group was very positive. Universally, stakeholders feel there's an opportunity for better communication between parents and the school system, and to enhance communications by parents talking to one another. Another consistent theme was the opportunity to broaden family engagement, helping parents and guardians feel more comfortable navigating the school system, particularly as they transition from one school to the next, and also providing more opportunities for parents to be involved with low-time commitment. Ultimately, the stakeholders really reaffirmed the need and the desire for a district-wide group, and their feedback helped shape the purpose and the principles that we'll tell you a little more about.
My name is Kim Lang, and I would like to introduce you to our group, PAWS, Parent and Guardian Advocates for Wilmington Schools. We were trying to come up with a name for our group, and we thought that this fit perfectly, especially with the PAWS that they have throughout my experience with the elementary schools, and it's always been such a positive thing for the children, and it really made a lot of sense to us as a group. PAWS is a district-wide group of parents and guardians working together to increase understanding, family engagement, and collaboration in district-level initiatives. The group aims to create community by providing space for families to listen and learn from each other, and enhance pathways for collaboration with teachers, administrators, school committee, and community members. The group expects to be a positive contributor in the support of the student experience as a whole. For our guiding principles, we would like to expand access and inclusion, lower the barriers for participation and engagement by centering on the needs of families, provide a variety of ways to connect, possibly in small bites so that people feel like they can contribute even if it's not running the show, including families of all circumstances, amplify and summarize district messaging and communication channels. We want to encourage dialogue, create opportunities for parents and guardians to listen and learn from each other, promote interaction across stakeholders to increase understanding and awareness throughout the community. We want to create community through positive and productive exchange, support a spirit of togetherness and strengthen partnerships across the Wilmington Public School District, actively promote civil discourse to gain constructive results. Not everybody agrees all the time, but you can still find a common ground. Recognize success and promote positive interactions within the school.
Hello, my name is Angela Figueredo. So I'm here to talk about the plans for PAWS for the rest of this year and for the next year. So our plan is to be an independent parent and guardian group that works closely with the school committee subcommittee on family outreach. We plan to maintain the current structure and have 2 parent and guardian representatives from each school support our planning efforts. But we also invite all parents to join and to participate in our group. Key activities are that we'll do asynchronous communication, community conversations, and we'll have PAWS events. Possible areas of focus that our group will work on are helping all families to navigate the WPS network and school system, to update families on progress on district strategic plans, to coordinate across grades in schools and to help transitions of families as they transition into a new school, academic and curricular context, district-wide facilities and IT planning, school schedule changes, and extracurricular offerings. As an example of what we plan to do in the upcoming months, in September of this year, we're going to introduce PAWS to a district-wide email that goes out to our school system and with a survey to better understand the needs, interests, and priorities of WPS families. We will recruit parents and guardians to be the school representatives in our group, and we will launch our PAWS Facebook group. In October, we have planning meetings. So we'll have the representatives from each school start meeting and have planning activities, explore synergies with the school committee, subcommittee, administration, and the teachers, and communicate plans for the fall semester via Facebook. We also plan in October to host a community conversation for parents and guardians, such as a back-to-school question and answers.
So my name is Ursula Tasto. So what do we expect to achieve with PAWS? So this PAWS district-wide group, we're really looking to facilitate communication. We want to facilitate communication with this group, with the school committee, with Dr. Brand and other administrators, with teachers, and other parents and guardians. We want to support parents and guardians in understanding all the wonderful things that our school district offers and being able to navigate the school system. We want to be a trusted partner. We want to be a partner to other parents, to everyone here and all these stakeholders, so that we can be trusted to assist in any challenges that may come our way and just to promote the schools. We want to expand access. So a big piece of the feedback we heard is that some parents need things in bite-sized pieces. So we want to expand access and be inclusive of all families and circumstances, being able to participate at the levels that they can when they can. We want to connect and leverage the broader community to support the future success of the WPS. We want to be, as that trusted partner, we want to be the pulse of the community, someone that you guys can rely on to ask questions about what are parents looking for and be able to facilitate those conversations. We want to advocate for district-wide initiatives that improve the experiences that our students have. And we want to maintain and support cohesion across this district. So we really are looking today for people that are interested, other parents that are listening tonight that are interested in being part of this vision that we've shared. We want to have parents that want to make that that difference in our district, where you want to work together, where you want to enhance the communication, where you want to work well with other parents. So if you're interested in that, or you have ideas for us, please reach out, wilmington.paws@gmail.com. We are looking for parents that are energized to be a part of this difference that we're envisioning and helping make our schools much better. So we are looking for parent representatives to cover all the different schools, but we're also looking for people that are interested in engaging in conversations and looking for additional information or to provide suggestions. So with that, we thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Mrs. Burns?
So could I ask, I do have to say, as I was, I'm honest, I'm very apprehensive, and I know we had this family, well, I'm gonna be honest, family community outreach subcommittee that was kind of flying in state without any effectiveness, and I was a little hesitant with the initial approach, but in seeing more clearly, and I just have to say how so wonderful in reading your presentation for this evening, the clear expectations and direction, and the presentation of that. I'm very elated. I am so very grateful for for the PAWS to invest in the work that we do, as well as, because we're all on the same mission of benefiting the best for our students and our staff to deliver what our kids deserve and need to venture off and become independent adults. My first question, though, is how often are you planning on meeting? Will it be taking into consideration the present social situation? Would it be through Zoom? What are your thoughts with regards to, I know you're still gathering troops, but what's the expectation with regards to meeting regularly so parents can at least have that expectation, okay, they're meeting on these days, or what's the thought at this juncture, I guess?
So we don't have all the answers, I'll be the first to admit it, but our expectation is that we will be meeting on some cadence. Monthly is probably the right cadence, and we'll probably have on the order of 2 to 3 district events, and we're calling district events, so they're conversations where, we are looking at, one of the big things that we heard from a lot of parents is they don't know what's coming at the next school. So we envision that there might be an opportunity where we have a kind of what's coming next year, kind of maybe in the winter or something like that, where parents that are already in that school can share with parents that are entering that school, what to expect, what is it like there, far before we are changing schools in September. or August, depending on the school year. So there are things like that. We,
School mixers, maybe at the late springtime?
Exactly, yeah. Well, so, and again, we're trying to envision what this is, but, you know, having dialogue in a lot of these meetings so we can exchange information. And we are talking about Zoom. Zoom has kind of really opened the door for easy access. We can have a child in bed or doing their homework and you can jump on a call, whereas you can't always do that if you don't have childcare.
And is this even on? It felt like it's right here. So I would also say that, you know, this is a building year, and we recognize that as the first step of recruitment and sort of planning. But I also think it's interesting that we are very careful about parent time, even in our own working group, because we recognize like how valuable it is and how little we have of it. And so I think it probably won't be structured for a meeting for the sake of a meeting, and it will probably revolve around opportunities to connect in really important and what's like timely topics. So, you know, whether or not it's more structured or whether it's not, those are all part of the conversations that I think we need to have in the early fall. But I definitely think that's been a theme of both our meetings and what we want to carry forward in terms of, you know, we can't make this too big of a lift, both for the participants that are planning it and for those that might join us for some conversations.
Very good, thank you.
Mrs. Furman.
I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your vision, and I think that you have a great pulse on some of the needs in this district. Can you help the community understand what differentiates PAWS from like the PAC? Because I know like the PAC is often desperate for participation and volunteers, and one worry that I had was like, ooh, are we gonna sort of dilute the pool of people who could give us their time for these important missions, and help us understand and differentiate the groups?
Yeah, and I think, you know, part of this, when we talked, I think last year, we were really talking about the gap that we saw as we thought about navigating, obviously, the crisis and sort of district policies, and how do we sort of have discourse, right, and conversation around some really challenging and complex situations. So I think that we're really focused on the district level versus the individual schools, or, you know, some of the things that you might want to bring to a principal or to a teacher that really impact your individual school as a child in an individual school. You know, obviously fundraising is really at the PACs and at the school level at this point, as are the enrichment activities that are very distributed right now. So really, I think it's a different conversation in the way that we see it. It's really about sort of planning and how do things work across schools, and how do we think about, you know, certain academic content that might need to stretch and span across grade levels, across classes, and across sides of town. You know, we all recognize real need through the strategic plan for facilities and IT planning, and those conversations aren't going to sort of be at the individual school level. So in some ways, I see this as a different conversation. It's a different level. It's more of a macro view than sort of the school view. And I also think there may be opportunities to sort of tie in a bit strategically and think a little bit more broadly together in support, I think, of the work that's happening with the administration and the school committee, and I believe parents together advocating in a sort of collective way is really important to the conversations, as we've seen from, you know, individual parent comments. You know, is that really representative of what the beliefs are or what the needs are across the district? So we see ourselves as sort of crowdsourcing some of that in support of helping us navigate some of the directions that you all are planning for.
I really appreciate one other quick thing. I really appreciate that, and I also think that you are providing the community an appropriate forum and an outlet or avenue to have these conversations, as opposed to what we often see happening on social media. And I really appreciate how you started this presentation explaining that, you know, the goal is really to have a positive and supportive approach for the school system, because that is how we move in that direction. So I really appreciate the work.
Thank you. Other questions or comments, Mr. Smaha?
Yeah, I think this is fantastic. I'm very excited about this. I like some of the wording too of thinking about the access and including all families and circumstances in that, because I know a lot of times, in my experience anyway, Wilmington a lot of times is geared towards, you know, a family that has at least one parent at home all the time. And I know for my family that's not true. So I think that's important. I really like the idea of utilizing Zoom as a, you know, where somebody doesn't have to go get a babysitter to go to a meeting. You know, I really like the idea of the communication, like what's gonna, you know, when right now where we have so many transitions between, you know, from the kindergarten to the 1 through 3 to the 4 to 5, that's going to be really, really important. And for me personally, I have twins, my only 2 children, so they're in high school now. But when, you know, as they were growing up, I never like had an older child to know what to expect at the next school. So it was always like, what, you know, what's gonna happen next. So I would have really enjoyed this. So I think this is going to be. I think this is an important step, important step forward. And I think you're right. I think it's filling those gaps. So I'll stop talking, but I'm very excited about it. I'm very happy about it. So thank you.
Mr. Ragsdale.
2 things that I want to highlight from what you said, and one I think goes to what Mr. Smaha was just saying, that I like the looking forward aspect of trying to know in advance what you're getting into. That you don't just sort of show up on the first day of a new grade and then just start asking, oh, does anyone know how this works? That there's a little bit of an idea that you can get a jump on some of these aspects. And we all know that, you know, no matter how well a school system communicates, that there are certain things that you can only get from other parents who've experienced it and really get, like, you know, the parent lowdown. If you know, oh, but you know, before you get to Clark Farm, just make sure you go and do this other thing first. You'll be really glad you did. Another point, and this has been said multiple times, about this idea of kind of using bite-sized pieces and respecting parent time, which is not only, I think, valuable in itself, but is so important for the sustainability of, you know, an enterprise like this. That, you know, sometimes you get a lot of enthusiasm at the beginning of a project, and the question is, but how long are people going to sustain that kind of commitment if it's, you know, an extremely large commitment? And the reality is often not that long, which is why so many projects fizzle. And so I think that it's both good in its own right, but also a very smart thing for making this like a true ongoing concern that can be sustained moving forward. I have a question, and I encourage anyone to jump in and speak to it. When you were conducting interviews, so you did over 25 interviews, including with teachers and administrators, and I was curious what some of the common themes that you heard from speaking to sort of, you know, district staff and school teachers, as far as what benefits they felt that they would receive from this type of group, as far as their communication with parents or hearing back from parents, like having that conduit back and forth. I was wondering if there was some insight that people could share from those conversations.
Sorry, I do research for a living, so it's easy for me to do that. So in terms of the theme, actually we had quite a few themes that we will certainly detail or have detailed, but, you know, the ones that are just persistent in my mind, even from when I did the analysis of the data, and this is just people's comments, was having opportunities for two-way communications. That sometimes they put things out in the ethos and they don't necessarily hear something back, or that they feel like, you know, people are just talking to them and having that opportunity to get more involved and make a difference. So that two-way communication was definitely from the both the parents and as well as teachers, right? A lot of times the teachers are just throwing out their communications, and to know, you know, parents are listening and they care can really be positive reinforcement for teachers and school administrators as well. Across stakeholders, we did also think about this group as just a way to kind of amplify what the communications. There's a lot of good work being done by a lot of good disparate groups in this organization. So even, almost every stakeholder liked this idea of sharing information and having another, group of parents sharing that information and amplifying their key messages. Did I miss any key things?
I think there's another piece that people are looking for is greater connection across the district, even from sides of town, and then, going up the different schools and across the side of towns to really understand what's going on. And that feedback came more broadly, not just from parents. And then the other piece of it is really like creating a positive discourse. Everyone's looking for a positive discourse and having that place to safely do so. It was a tough year last year, and I think that's acknowledged by everybody. And so having a place where people can listen to each other and learn from each other in a positive way.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Oh,
I just want to thank you for your work. I've had the good fortune to see part of this presentation and the general thinking a number of months back. It was in the spring. And the things that you've touched upon both then and tonight they ring so true from going back now a few years, but from my original entry into the district and some of the feedback that I had gathered through my entry plan and data gathering. And the reality that, while there's a lot of great work and perhaps conversations at the local building level, we are a big district, at least by the way of number of buildings we have, not so much population. And there does seem to be great opportunity for growth to really to bolster or strengthen those partnerships, right? And you think about the work that we obviously do, and we know it's all about stakeholders and connecting those stakeholders, and that includes both staff and includes both obviously families as well too. So I'm very excited about the prospect of this and partnering with you, and I'm confident our administrators as well too, because this is a two-way street, and everyone I think has an opportunity here to benefit once this gets rolling. So thanks so much for all of your work and your commitment.
I'll just echo that and say, I'm overjoyed. So I think this is definitely the direction we need to be moving in, and the opportunity to engage with parents across the district, and just to provide spaces, even just in our own subcommittee meetings, where we're just having why would that be done that way? We would do it this way to do it, and so it kind of like, it just feels like it provides this very necessary avenue to help illuminate what's already happening in the district in kind of different ways. So I think the partnership is going to be great. I think it's really, I have high hopes for where this will take us, to make us feel like, I guess the word that keeps coming in is like cohesive. Like I feel like there's just going to be this cohesion that maybe, I've been through most of, I'm one in the high school now, and so I think we're kind of yearning for that, and I think this is definitely, now I look back and I'm like, oh, this would have made a lot of sense, like, oh, they should have done this sooner, So I think I'm really excited, and I think everyone's going to be really excited to participate and see what comes up and what comes out of it. So thank you. I know this was a tremendous amount of time that you spent doing all of this work and figuring out how to make this work and what it would look like, and I know it's just beginning, but we're really excited and grateful to you for those hours of volunteerism. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, next item, we have the equity audit proposal presentation, Dr. Brand.
Mr. Smaha, or actually, no, I'll just grab it. So, grab it.
Oh,
yeah,
no,
thank
that's
you.
Throw it.
Seriously.
Chuck
Okay, the last item this evening under new business, there are a couple of pieces to this that you'll see in the packet. First off, there is a memo that provides hopefully a backdrop or context for the presentation that's to come here. There is the presentation itself, the slides are included in the packet, and also an overview of a draft RFP proposal for what, at least I envision at this point, we could use as part of the posting should the committee indeed be supportive of moving in this direction. So we've talked on a couple of occasions, I think previously, and certainly within the equity subcommittee, around this, what I believe is an important idea and opportunity for our school district. to pursue an equity audit. And so my goal tonight is to provide hopefully more context for you as a committee and also our community around just exactly what this is. And this is a proposal because ultimately it is something that I believe is important and appropriate for you to weigh in on as a committee. Certainly as it would involve fiscal resources, which obviously you oversee, and hence why ultimately also it's here tonight. We've had conversations with the Equity Subcommittee, again previously, around how we can, as a school district and educational community, try and set some important stakes in moving our work forward in the direction of supporting equity, inclusion, and diversity. Through your support, you obviously know that we are now a partner with the SEAM Collaborative and the newly launched EDI coordinator position. I'm hopeful, by the way, to have Ms. Barrows, India Barrows, here to be introduced to you in the near term. She wasn't, unfortunately, able to make it tonight. She literally just started her employment yesterday. So, but we'll look forward to having a chance to have her here and expand upon what it is that we envision her work to be in the district. As it relates to a proposal, though, I think some things that are very worthy to start with, and that is an anchor within the strategic plan. That for those that maybe in the community sort of tuning in and wondering aloud where in fact is this idea of the equity audit coming from, I would take them back, and I would take our community back to the work that was a part of our foundation that we established through not my strategic plan, but our community's plan. Ultimately, a plan approved by the school committee at the time, which was a 3-year plan, and that inherent in that plan was a central vision, and that central vision you can see outlined there, and it speaks very clearly and very strongly around seeking an inclusionary environment that's respectful and collaborative and so on. As part of that plan, there are a number of objectives that you will recall make up that plan, and we will be returning here, probably not next meeting, but probably the next one thereafter, to review the strategic plan. I've talked before about the fact that we obviously had the bulk of the work, not all, but the bulk of the work on hold with that plan, given COVID last year. But it is my full intention to bring that plan back to you and provide you with an update and a sense of direction of where we're moving forward. But the larger point here is that embedded in that plan and embedded in our strategic objectives are elements related, or aspects related, to specifically culture of inclusion. And you can see them outlined here. That one of the action steps included within that plan, the formation of a committee to review data and explore district practices around inclusion and equity. This plan was approved by the school committee, and those action steps therein in the fall of 2019. I believe I have that correct. So we are, and this proposal is here before you as a committee for consideration, because I think it's appropriate and timely to resume our focus, broadly speaking, within the strategic plan. Obviously, though, on a broader level, arguably since this strategic plan was approved, there certainly has been a number of there are a number of examples of social and racial injustices throughout the country that are and continue to impact communities in different ways. There's probably many more had I spent more time probing this. I just didn't think it was necessary, but I'd certainly be happy to if the committee is interested in it. But there are a number of school districts that right now, or as recently as last year, or are setting out to do this year, engaging in equity audits under the same name. Just some that are somewhat nearby. You can see listed there: Linfield, Hingham, Milton, Framingham, Norwood, Watertown, Revere, and Sudbury, and I'm sure that list could be probably quadrupled, I would suspect. So what exactly is an equity audit? It is about data. It is about information gathering, and it is ultimately, when you peel back the layers, a framework to gather that information, a benchmarking tool, if you will, to try and hone in on specific aspects and areas related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is about data. It's about impressions. It's about feedback and information. And what I think that quote that I found there, I think captured, or part of a quote captures it, I think, nicely. We would be taking a look, rather, and organizations who do this, to take a look at their practices and trends and the reality that marks the landscape throughout. And certainly that's at the heart of what an audit holds as a possibility. Not always is it limited to, but you can see an overview of what the data collection frequently includes. And you can see an overview there. And it starts within the school setting, of course, within classrooms, the artifacts and materials and such that are used. But it is much broader than that. And it also certainly has at its core the opportunity to gather feedback from all of our stakeholders, not just our staff, but our students and our families and broader community members. And so I think that's an important piece to point out. The community engagement piece here, I think, is critical to understand and to focus on, and that from my understanding of what an equity audit does and should include, and that is opportunities to engage our stakeholders in our community. And so I think that's an important piece to point out. So what I'm proposing, the recommendation here, is indeed that we move forward with engaging a third party to assist in the completion of an equity audit. I think that as an organization right now, it was probably back during the time of the strategic plan, I will admit to you that I thought that this idea, this concept, or this tool of an equity audit might have been something that we could tackle internally. I'm not so sure about that now. I'm not so sure about that now for a couple of reasons. One, it's not just about capacity, but that's certainly a part of it. But it's, I think, more about expertise, and not, to my knowledge, having the expertise or my belief of the expertise within house, within our staff or community members to be able to do this on our own. That I think that this is something that requires experience, past experience in different contexts and different settings to help really guide us. And so that's behind this here. I also will point out that I'm not exactly sure from the standpoint of an actual financial dollar how much an audit will be. I have tried to explore with other communities who have partnered with other outside agencies. The numbers range. I will admit to you. I've heard of one audit in the neighborhood of $10,000, another, a bigger district, twice that. But ultimately, when we go through a process like this through the RFP, it's an opportunity, should we indeed be in this direction, of putting out that chance for a third party to put together a proposal, and then from there we would obviously take one that we felt would be most cost effective and fit what our needs are. I think that this will take some time to complete. This is not a one-week process or project, but certainly, again, I think another advantage of entertaining the thought of engaging a third party to try and move it forward as swiftly but as coherently as we can. And I think that that's an advantage as well, too. So tonight, I'm not, as I mentioned in the memo, I'm certainly not seeking your possible approval tonight. I know that there's a lot here to think about and consider. There may be more questions that you have that either I can try and answer tonight or certainly at the next meeting. But my hope is that you'll give this consideration and at your next meeting perhaps be in feeling a better place to be able to try and support something along this realm. So I'll stop there and happy to take questions.
Thank you. Mrs. Burns?
So I'm absolutely amendable to this proposal. I think what I'd like to see is what we've typically had in the past with similar situations, whether it be bringing in outside consultants that, send it out to bid and bring back to the board the top 3 and your recommendations
Sure.
as to where, why and where you'd like to hire and the amount in that
Yes.
realm. I think that's what I would like to see. Other than that, I think I think you're right in line with regards to resources, time, allotment. With regards to hiring a third consultant, I think it's a solid foundation to start from in order to do very detail-oriented work that is still, in my opinion, maybe it's just not me, it's still in its infancy in many ways. In many ways, it's not, but in the progression of cultivating and creating programming within our schools, I do think it's still young, and I think having someone to take those experienced eyes within our district to give us recommendations, I think would save us a lot of time, and I think it would be, the long end would save us money on the back end. So I am amenable to your proposal here with the, other presentation to be forthcoming.
Thank you.
Thanks, MJ. Other questions or comments? Mr. Samana?
I'm in agreement with Ms. Burns about this. I think this is I was really happy to see this, and I'm happy that I think this is like the smart way to approach it. And I think you've really done a lot of research and some thinking about this, which I appreciate, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes before us for approval or not. But as it stands right now, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Thanks.
So I would echo those comments as well. I'm thrilled to see this moving forward. I was curious, in reading through the sort of draft version of the RFP, you sort of indicated that you'd like to see the work begin in the winter. If, sort of following what we're talking about now, you were to come back to the next meeting with a recommendation that was approved, would that give you enough time? Would that allow you to stay on that timeline?
Well, I suggested, yeah, thank you, that's a good question. I suggested the winter, realistically thinking, just logistically about if indeed the committee is in support. It's the end of September. We get something out there. It will certainly take, however many weeks, I forget how many weeks it has to be posted or such, but.
It's just soliciting bids for certain price range for a couple of
So, inevitably, maybe best course or best case is perhaps there's somebody by the end of October, and
Sure.
But then you're heading into November and Thanksgiving and so on. So for the actual work to get started, perhaps it is before the winter break, but maybe just getting going. I think that's doable. All dependent upon, how many possible bidders are out there and how quickly they can get started. I truly don't know how many experienced consultants or entities are out there that do this work, and I don't know how busy they are right now. I do think that there's certainly a sense of a lot of communities and organizations pursuing this, but hopefully if we could get somebody on board, we could get it. I think that time frame, my hope is doable, but that would be certainly also contingent upon who we may select as well too.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Ragsdale?
One thing I want to mention is, because I think it might occur to some people, is why an outside consultant seems perhaps the way to go here. Dr. Brand already spoke to why not doing it internally, which I think is absolutely true, that this requires a certain amount of experience and expertise. This is specialized work. But also that even though we have a newly appointed EDI coordinator with the SEAM Collaborative, that having Ms. Barrows undertake this work doesn't seem to be the best use of her time for our district. Since she has 5 other districts to also support, how much consecutive immediate time could we get in order to perform this work in the first place? And then even after that, how much would we have left of her time to then do the other work that we want to actually look at in the district? And so that's why I also support hiring an outside firm to do this rather than using her for this particular job. And in general, I'd want to say that to me, the purpose of doing an audit like this is to get insight into things that you didn't know about your district. That there's, I think, things in the area of equity that we can see and that we could go forward with just on our own awareness and knowledge. But there's a lot of things that are difficult to see, and that a good sort of forensic examination of the practices of the district will reveal in a lot of different areas. And I don't think they're all going to be obvious or what you would necessarily expect. That we may find that there are certain things that we thought were going to be a problem that actually we're doing better than you might have expected or that we expected. And likewise, that there might be some areas where we had no idea there was any kind of problem whatsoever. And that we'll be glad to find out that, well, I mean, not glad to find out, but better to know than not to know that there are some practices that we need to examine more closely that we otherwise would not have.
Thank you. Mrs. Carmen?
I appreciate a lot of the things you just said, David. Initially when the idea of hiring someone to do just the audit, my initial thought was like, wait a minute, we're hiring an EDI specialist to do this. So at first I was like, I'm not really sure about this, but the more that we talk this through, the more it does make sense to me. So I just think that, I think it's important for the community to just hear that and understand that as we sort of contemplate this. But I also wanted to echo what David was saying around some of the things that this audit could help us understand. I think that some people have this understanding that an equity audit is solely focused on race. And I want people to understand that this is going to be looking at equity and opportunity for lots of students. Students that have physical disabilities, students that have emotional disabilities, learning disabilities, students that are maybe homeless. So I just want people to have a broader understanding of what an equity audit can shine light on for us. And like David was saying, it may help us understand areas in which we are doing very well. So I do think that this is a worthy thing to pursue.
I don't have anything new to add that hasn't already been said, but I am in agreement with looking for an outside vendor to be able to do this equity audit.
That sounds unanimous to me.
I am though thinking fiscally with regard to this too, because we've talked about hiring these, outsourcing a lot of these services in different areas of late. So we've talked a bit about, well, Ms. Barrows and hiring that position, that shared position. But also a consultant to support the middle school steering committee work, and that has been on pause, and I know we'll revisit that soon. But so I'm just thinking about the fiscal commitments around these various things that we have going on, and just, I guess, seeking reassurance that the funding for these different things are being accounted for, and that these are things that we can easily cover.
It's a very fair and important question, and I'll just remind the committee that we, through your budget process and for fiscal year 22, we again identified an allocation for work, broadly speaking, in support of the strategic plan, and so that's where this would come from. Should we move forward with that? Should we move forward rather with this? And so. And certainly, just on a general level, I mean, we the middle school is another example. The intention would be for that to be funded under that, I believe, under that line as well too. So, I appreciate the question. It's an important one, and certainly, obviously, I was working, in partnership with Paul to make sure that we can that it squares out, or squares off rather, in terms of what the budget plan originally was. And so it's with that understanding that this, we can support this financially within the budget lines that we have.
No, I'm just gonna, can I jump in? It's really difficult to sit, I'm just like, can I talk? In some ways, when I think about the strategic plan and the work that has been done, even though I know we feel as though pieces of it have been on hold, this seems to represent, to me, one of the most significant commitments to that strategic plan. Like, okay, now we are really looking deeply and we are committing to moving this forward. And so I'm really excited to see this come back. And to echo Melissa's point on equity and access, I think all of us sit around this table and say we want to make sure all of our students have access, and this will help us to ensure that, or at least to be in a place where we can make sure all of our students are accessing the curriculum. So I'm in full support of it. David?
Yeah, and I just want to expand it even further on Ms. Bauman's point that, you know, a true equity audit looks at equity very broadly, that you have some traditional categories that we want to, you know, we want to look at racial categories, we want to look at economically disadvantaged students, English language learners, students with disabilities. But it's also any group of students for any reason, even if there's no real category. Why are these students on this side of town having an opportunity that these students on the other side of town aren't happening? Why are students in these classrooms having better results than students in these classrooms? There doesn't have to be firm categories describing any particular group of students to have a potential issue of, you know, equitable access to, you know, both education, extracurriculars, and everything else that we offer in Wilmington. So I'm hoping and expecting this to be a very broad look at the idea of, you know, equitable access to what we provide.
It's a great explanation.
All right, I'm gonna move us on. Do you need anything else from us right now?
I do not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everyone. All right. Other reports, are there any subcommittee reports? Mrs. Plowman, I think you have an update.
I do. I want to make sure I have my dates right. So yes, the WEF committee, the WEF board has their first meeting planned for next Thursday in person at the high school at 7 p.m. And so I'm looking forward to reconnecting with everybody there. And I know that they are looking for someone to step into the treasurer's role this year. So if anybody has interest in being part of the WEF board, please do reach out, and the email to do that. Anybody off the top of their head? Hold on, I can find it.
Is it Wilmington ED Foundation? Hang on a second. Won't open.
Hold on. I think I can just give them Leslie's.
It's Wilmington Ed Foundation @gmail.com.
Thank you, Christine. Appreciate that. That's it. That's my update.
Thank you. Any other subcommittee reports?
We don't have to report on the policy.
We don't have to report. I think we did I'm not sure if we did a fine job, but we did present, so. Correspondence, MJ?
None this evening.
Okay. Future school committee dates and other notable items. We have our school open houses. Just this evening, Woburn Street and Shawsheen have their open houses. Middle school is tomorrow evening. High school is September 13th. We have Boutwell and Wildwood on the 14th of September, and North and West Intermediate on September 23rd. I also want to, we have another meeting, obviously September 22nd. September has a 5th, so we're not meeting obviously on that Wednesday, so mark your calendars. And then October 13th is our first meeting in October. And I also want to mention the email we received, and some of us have seen some of the workings of the 9/11 Memorial Committee Anniversary Remembrance Program. A lot of work has gone into this, and there's many people to thank, but they are having their program here at the high school. I believe it's in the courtyard at 8:30 a.m. And your families are welcome to attend the event. And it looks as though it's going to be really, really quite impressive and wonderful. So we are thankful for that. And I just got a picture today of all the high school volunteers putting the flags out on the common area. So thank you to everyone behind this event. And I think, unless anyone else has anything else to share that I missed.
I move to adjourn.
All right, is there a second? Mrs. Newhouse, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Good night.